Hi guys, good evening. Welcome back once again to the EdWord. I'm your host Eddie, and in tonight's video I will be doing my episode review and recap for episode 10 of season 2 of FX's The Strain. Now, before I begin, of course, with all my recap and review videos, as you know by this point, but it's good repeating, that if you're not caught up on The Strain, or if you're behind a couple episodes or the most recent episode, do not continue watching or listening to this video, as I will be going into big spoilers. So, you have been warned. That being said, very good episode. Very good episode. You know, it's like, we saw our main characters split off into two groups. Satrakian, Fett, and Nora continue to search for the book that will hold the secret to killing the Master, while F and Dutch decide to, initiate their assassination attempt on Eldritch Palmer. And, they do get a shot at him. They shoot at him, but unfortunately they accidentally shoot his innocent young secretary who got caught in the line of fire. He didn't even get a graze on him. She took the bullet, though, and unfortunately they're not able to get away fast enough, Dutch and F, so they're taken to a local precinct while the secretary is rushed to Palmer's private quarters in his company's building, where his doctors and nurses take care of her and work on her. The surgeons are working on her. And then he basically tells Icorse that unless the Master saves her life, he is dropping out of the whole operation. Like, no more resources, no more help, absolutely nothing more will come from him unless the Master saves her life. And Icorse can't promise that the Master will actually do anything about it. But Palmer just doesn't seem to have it or want it. He's like, look, if she doesn't live, I'm out. That's it. And I think it's interesting that we see this streak of humanity in Palmer, which we've never really seen with him before. I mean, he had kind of a soft spot for his late servant Fitzwilliam, but for the most part, we never really saw him actually caring for or expressing emotion towards anybody, especially not Icorse or the Master. He puts up with them because he has to, and he doesn't necessarily really like them. But he does put up with them. But it's interesting to see this new streak of humanity in Palmer, and maybe he's not too far gone after all. There's a possibility. I think there's a very slim possibility that there is just a tiny streak of humanity left in him, and maybe it's just enough humanity to have him care about a significant other. In this case, it's his secretary Coco, as he calls her. And I'm honestly very surprised that the Master was so quick and willing to comply with his demand that he save her, heal her. And of course, this only goes to show that even though Icorse and the Master probably will never admit it, especially to Palmer, they absolutely need him. He's essential to their overall plan and their operations. So even though they won't say it out loud or to his face, they need him. And in order to keep him, they got to comply with what he demands. In this case, it's like, fine, we'll save your secretary's life, but you're still working for us. And he does that thing that he did to Palmer. He gives her 2 drops of his white blood, or the worm blood, and she comes out of her coma just fine. And I don't think she's going to turn into a Strigoi, because like Palmer, she's just had her lifespan expanded. Meanwhile, Fett, Nora, and Satrakian are tracking down all of the possible addresses for the guy who may have in his possession the book, the ancient book that they were trying to get from the Cardinal in the previous episode. And he gave them the name. Unfortunately, there were 4 people in the whole city with that very name, so they have to go from address to address, where they kill a Strigoi along the way. And, and when they hear news about Palmer's assassination attempt on the radio, and then Fett confesses to his allies that F and Nora were planning to do something like this, and they must have carried it out. And then he and F and Dutch, sorry. And he and Nora decide that they need to go to the precinct where they would be holding them and try to get them out of there one way or another. But Satrakian, surprisingly, well, not really that surprisingly, but he is so insistent on the fact that they continue their search for the book. He is absolutely insistent and relentless in continuing his search for the book, and he insists that this takes priority, even more priority than saving their allies. But Fett won't have it. He lets the professor know right to his face that they are more important than this book, showing that he does indeed very much care, definitely for Dutch. We knew he cared a great deal for Dutch, but he does have some kind of respect or admiration for F after all. Even though their relationship got off to a rocky start back in season 1, they seem to be becoming closer, and Fett insists they go rescue them, and Nora's in full agreement. So they leave Satrakian to continue his search for the book on his own, and at first Satrakian looks a little bummed that they practically ditched him, but he's like, well, good luck to them, but I got to keep looking for this book. He's absolutely driven to find this book. In fact, I would say Satrakian is probably the most driven character on this show, besides F, who is driven and determined by revenge and also necessity to kill Eldritch Palmer, because they know if they kill Eldritch Palmer, it would cripple the Strigoi plans and operations currently affect in the city, and I'm sure it would definitely affect their overall plan for world domination, which they seem to be hinting at all the time, is that the Master ultimately hopes to rebuild up this kingdom of the Strigoi kingdom all over the globe, and essentially rule for all time is what they keep implying. So we'll see. We'll see if that comes to be or not. But this episode was very good, and I especially enjoyed the scene where the Strigoi attacked the police precinct where F and Dutch were being held. Unfortunately, Dutch was dragged off by some cops, and she was trying to fight back against them, and so was F, but they punched him, and he's like, you better not hurt her! I swear to God, you better not hurt her! Don't you hurt her! Showing that he cares about Dutch as well. She's a mutual ally, and they're becoming friends as well, so it was nice to see some growth in relationships in this episode, and, we don't know what they do to Dutch, but, right after they take her away, all the cops clear the precinct, and that's when Palmer and he have basically their first face-to-face. In fact, now that I think about it, this episode marked the very first time Palmer and F have actually ever met each other. They knew each other by name and reputation, but now they have met each other face-to-face. And F expresses remorse for shooting his assistant, but doesn't regret the fact that he took the shot in the first place. Like, he does not regret that at all. And then he gives Palmer shit for, instead of being the Master's partner, he's more like his pawn. And you can tell it kind of gets under Palmer's skin, but at the same time he puts up the strong facade that he's in control of the situation, which he kind of is, but F still gets at him. So that was a good scene between villain and hero. So that was fun. But anyway, getting back to my original part, I loved when the Strigoi attack the police precinct, and that can't be by coincidence. Palmer or the Master, one or the other, or both of them, probably arranged the attack on the police precinct to not only kill those cops, but more importantly, go after F, because F now poses a pretty big threat for taking a shot at Palmer like that. Like, literally taking a shot at him. So the Strigoi attack, they kill the cops, they get into this small little fight, and then one cop forces himself into F's cell, and they're both, like, pushed up against the wall, and there's this great shot, like this overhead shot of the Strigoi's tongues going blah, 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 and we see them just shooting out back and forth, like these four tongues keep going back and forth, and they're just far enough away where they can't hit F or the cop. Unfortunately, when the cop turns his head and his body to reload his gun, that's when one of the tongues latches onto him, another one grabs his shoulder, and F tries to pull him back, but he can see it's too late, and the cop turns like dead white, like deathly white, in a second. But right before the Strigoi can break through the cell, Nora and Fett show up in the nick of time to wipe out the rest of the Strigoi and break F out. But they notice Dutch is missing, and F says, I don't know what happened to her. They took her a few hours ago, and they didn't say where they were bringing her. One of the cops who arrested F shows up because he was distracted by some noise the Strigoi were making before the attack. He shows up, and he does make an effort to stop the three allies, but Fett does demand to know where they took Dutch, and you can tell this cop was in on it. He was probably paid off by Palmer to take Dutch away out of the cell and bring her to some secluded location. And then the cop realizing, what kind of mistake he's made and what he's gotten himself into, with seeing all of his dead colleagues and all the slaughtered Strigoi all over the ground, tells him you can find her at the Mayfield Hotel or something like that. He says that's where they've taken her. So our three allies leave. Meanwhile, cut back to Satrakian. He's at the fourth and final house, and he's absolutely desperate and literally out of breath from traveling all over the city all day, going from house to house, looking for this guy and looking for his book. And just when he's about to give up his search, there's a creak in the wood in the floor, and he opens up this secret hatch, and sure enough, there it is, the silver-reamed book, the Lukeman, or it's hard to pronounce, but it's the book with the secrets to effectively destroying the Strigoi, and most importantly, the Master. And we're like, oh, thank God. Well, they may have lost Dutch, and we don't know where she went. However, at least Satraki now has possession of the book. Nope. Wishful thinking. Somebody knocks him on the back of the head. It's not a Strigoi, because a Strigoi would have just latched his tongue onto him and made that horrible hissing noise they make. It wasn't the Strigoi, but somebody, mostly it looks like a human, smacks him on the side of the head. He drops down. He's kind of in and out of consciousness, just enough to see the book being taken from him, and we don't see the assailant's face. We don't know who it is. It looks like most likely a guy, but we don't know who it is. Could it be the man who was originally in possession of the book? The very man that Satrakian was looking for? Probably, maybe. Could it have been somebody else, like maybe Gus? Or Quinlan, the Sun Hunter? It didn't look like Quinlan, because Quinlan wears the typical Sun Hunter attire with the cloak and the robe, and this guy was not wearing that. In fact, this guy looked very, very human, even though we didn't see his face, just from by looking at his clothes and hands. But he knocks out Satrakian, takes the book, and escape, and Satrakian's left unconscious on the floor. And right before, and you think that's the end of the episode, but then they kind of surprise us, because it goes to black. And then we hear this chain scraping, and you're like, oh God, what is this? What is this? And then you're like, oh no, Dutch. And she's chained up to that horrible contraption that Eichhorst used in the first season and last season, where he was like reeling in this poor guy who had a chain wrapped around his neck, and it was just reeling him into this slab of cement where Eichhorst latched his tongue onto him and drank his blood. And it looks like he's planning to do the same thing with Dutch, because she's screaming and trying to resist being pulled by the chain that's wrapped around her neck. And Eichhorst, without any effort, is just reeling her in with this look of satisfaction on his face, like, ha, 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 got you. So, and that's definitely not the hotel the cop was talking about. In fact, we don't even know where this location is, but it's probably very secluded and isolated and well hidden. So our allies are going to have a hell of a time trying to find it, if they make it to her in time. But it doesn't look good for poor Dutch. And I've come to like her. I think she's an interesting character, and I especially like the growing romantic relationship between her and Fett. I think they're pretty good together. They go well together, and I hope for her sake and also Fett's sake that they get to her in time and she doesn't get turned or die at the hands of Eichhorst. So we'll see, and hopefully we'll find out who stole that book from Satrakian and why they didn't kill Satrakian and just knocked him unconscious. Perhaps it's a mutual ally, which is why I suggested it could have been Gus or Quinlan, or maybe some other third party. We don't know. Oh, one more thing. What I liked about the opening of this episode was that the mayor in the previous episode had pressured Councilwoman Justine Feraldo to help and evacuate the Upper East Side where all the rich people are, which she reluctantly agreed to. But I like the little catch she threw in the deal. She said in exchange for securing and protecting the Upper East Side, protecting the neighborhood with all the rich, wealthy, influential people in New York, they are going to have to literally pay a tax incentive that will go to helping the regular folks in New York City, the lower and middle class people who aren't as wealthy or influential as these people are. And that, of course, pisses off the mayor and all of his rich friends. But I like seeing a politician sticking to the system, like giving a big middle finger to the system of that's run by rich people. And this Justine Feraldo is not like any other councilwoman or politician. Like, she's like, okay, you want my men's protection and our help? Fine, but you're literally going to pay for it. And she makes an excellent point about in the previous episode during the Battle of Red Hook, how civilians, common civilians, paid in blood to protect their homes. And she's like, I'm sure you people would rather literally pay in gold and cash rather than with your own lives or your own blood. So she gave them very little choice, and of course they're still opposed to it, but she makes an excellent point about it too. I'm really starting to like this woman. I hope she's around for the rest of the season and possibly into next season, if not for the rest of the series. But I'm starting to like her a lot. I wasn't sure what to think of her at first, but I really like Justine. She's proving to be quite resourceful and quite badass in her own sense. So overall, very good episode. Very, very much enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. And I can't wait to see what happens. Hopefully we get that book back from the guy who stole it from Satrakian. But more importantly, I hope that Dutch gets rescued in time before she gets turned into a Strigoi or dies. So fingers crossed. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in here on the EdWord for all of your recap and review needs. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this video here on my channel, and I hope you enjoyed the most recent episode of The Strain. I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to end, like if there will be any more cliffhangers or big revelations at the end of this season. What did you guys think of this most recent episode? Leave your thoughts and opinions in your comments down below. Let's be respectful and civil of one another's opinions and beliefs, of course, please. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and stay tuned for more upcoming content and videos here on the EdWord. Have a great night, everybody, and of course, until next time, may the Force be with you.